Good morning. This is the training, learning, dive deeply session with Spencer Black. We're so glad that you've come in to share with us in a deep way, in a real conversational way, but also to go deeply so that we learn with each other. We find ways we can support your work, Spencer, and perhaps find ways that you can support our work. And there are candidates like Judge Barrington is here with us, a candidate for judge. Mary Carol Melton, the campaign manager for Charmaine, is here, and we are activists with the Bold New Democracy group, activist group, and the Indivisible, Cincinnati Indivisible Rapid Response Team group. So welcome, Spencer.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, we might have seen each other obviously in passing. I landed here essentially in 2018 and I haven't left. As you'll see here, thank you for the screen share. I was obviously born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. I was a fellow my senior year of high school with the Obama administration with ODP. I went to the Ohio State University, political science, marketing guy, minor in sociology. After that, I worked in Northwest Ohio, and things are falling. With that election over, I had a mentor, and that mentor was United States Representative Joyce Beatty. She welcomed me into her administration, where I worked as a legislative aide for her subcommittees on diversity and inclusion and oversight and investigations, which during the impeachment, I really missed. That was fun, but I knew there was a new election. I started working with the Human Rights Campaign in Washington, D.C. They asked me to come back to Ohio to work on a new project that they had, where they were actually putting a face to the organization and giving people a resource and an outlet to help with field operations. Pleasure. I thought I'd be here for 6 months and head back to either DC or back to Columbus. It didn't happen. I've settled here. I like it here. It's a gem of a city and it's got great people. Right now, I am still part of HRC's Workplace Equality Committee. We work with local, when I see ERGs and BRGs, those are resource groups for employees. So employee research groups and business research groups. As you might know, HRC has a quality index where they give a score to corporate companies. I not only work to increase that score within certain companies, but also to give those employees a place to land or resources outside of just the workplace. We know that when one is in a workplace environment, they can be a little bit more reserved about their ideas and opinions. And so we give them kind of a platform and a way to kind of figure out what's going on and how we can be of use. Yeah, in March of this year, which was really cool, I was elected to serve as a central committee person for my district of downtown, Cincinnati 6B, which is in historic West 4th. And today, I have the opportunity to serve as a deputy organizing director with the DNC, overseeing Pennsylvania for their last primary. And that's where I can kind of talk about what it was like to run a vote by mail campaign, specifically in Philadelphia County, specifically in the Pittsburgh, overseeing those, what my results were, where we had problems, and what that looks like. But I am happy to say that through recent conversations within the last week, I will be focusing my efforts in Ohio. In what capacity, we don't know yet, but I'm coming back to the Buckeye State. Which
That's exciting. I love it that you fell in love with Cincinnati, and that it's great to have young, powerful people join the community and love the city, which has a lot of good qualities, but there are many good cities. Columbus is wonderful too. But it's so great that you're here. At the end of Pride Month here, June is Pride Month, Spencer. What do you see as a way that the gay and lesbian, the whole community, all of us can come together to make a difference in this election cycle? What are the ways to connect in and make more partnerships with the gay and lesbian communities, in your view, as advice for us?
Yeah, of course. Well, what I think is so great about Pride this year is it seems to have another level of importance, of activism, of respect of the beginning of Pride. Most Pride is, go get your T-shirt, march in the parade, go buy your, your Pride gear at your local mall, and there's this level of not being authentic. But this year, it's like, no, we didn't have it good. We were not. It wasn't great. Tom is on the call, but it was just conversations. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to get married, and here we are. And so there's this another level of importance, I believe, that this Pride has that is felt different than any other Pride that I've been part of. And what is great is I was thinking in my mind, we've got to keep up this activism and the energy that we see over the last couple of weeks. But what we have is a Pride in October. So right before the election, we're going to see ourselves have the ability to jump back in, carry the energy that we have built up today, and hopefully force that, across the finish line in November. So
it's right.
We have another opportunity to kind of hit Pride again.
Right.
If everything stays down.
Right.
We can talk about that.
And right at the beginning, Spencer, I saw that too. It's right at the beginning of early voting, and where people can vote by mail. We'll be getting our ballots by mail too. So I like that timing of the new date for the Pride celebration in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's like I have people, asking me about the beginnings of Pride, what it was like in the beginning, what that liberation movement looked like. We're seeing people are coming out at a younger and younger age, and it's a beautiful thing to see. One, truly embrace themselves, but understanding that hasn't always been the case is vital. And this year, I think, has had an awakening of, oh, wow, this is what it feels like. And people are getting involved, I think, in new ways, and that's really, really just organic and wonderful to see.
For those of us that are not typically in the Pride movement or the importance of all that work, what's your suggestion of ways that we can be involved, that we can support the movement? Is it through the Human Rights Campaign, or what suggestions do you have for us as an activist group to support and be partnering with the Pride movement?
Yeah, so I'll touch on that, and then Susan has a great question here.
Yeah,
I would say allyship is vitally important. While you might think that things are, hey, we're married, we're done, checklist, finished, won, not the case. We have things to celebrate with this next, this last Supreme Court decision. That is fantastic. We've had protections in certain states, but not every state, and that has been, very difficult. It was a very real reality for someone to get married, come back to work, wear that ring, and end up in the unemployment line. So allyship is important. I would say if you don't understand the beginnings of the movement, self-education is also vitally important. And I can, provide maybe a list of resources and kind of ways to get involved there. But it doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be through the confines of an organization like HRC. It can just be in your everyday. If you don't have gay friends, we're great people. Meet us. Expand your horizons. You will be a kinder, better person when you learn from something that you maybe don't understand. I have a lot of family that is still not there. But I've always said, I gave myself years to come to terms with it. I'm going to give them years to come to terms with it.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it. Yeah.
You have to be allowing that uncomfortability to happen for there to actually be substantive change.
Terrific. Yeah.
And question here?
Susan, you had a question. Do you want to give it through the text, Susan, or do you want to speak it?
I'll read what I put in the text. Uh, Please explain the difference between the organizing and DNC efforts and the Biden campaign.
Yeah, it was an interesting rope for me to understand myself when I first started. So my experience in campaigns has always been either with a nonprofit, with an independent expenditure, or with a campaign, never in the confines of being in a party. So basically, we were supporting general democratic efforts, but we were not explicitly supporting the Biden campaign. So we were supporting all, vote by mail efforts and making sure polling locations were open and fighting and suing and all of that with the courts and the Board of Elections in Pennsylvania personally. We also were working to try and get everyone a mail-in ballot sent to their house. Biden has not accepted the Democratic nomination yet. Until he says those words, that is when our campaigns will merge and we will essentially start working for him. Okay. We still have two candidates for president. It's it's Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. That will change, I believe, at the end of July. That is what we've been talking with. I was just on a call with Pete Kavanaugh, who is the deputy campaign manager for Biden, and we were just talking about what's the timeline? When can I actually talk to you? When can I share information with you? When can I, but what we've been basically doing as the DNC is we've been just collecting a lot of data, cleaning up a lot of things, reassuring our voter protections, expanding voting rights. So that way, when the time comes and he accepts the nomination, we can flood him with resources. The Biden campaign is the smallest presidential campaign I have ever seen personally, but I know that means nothing. It is tiny. I mean, I'm probably smaller than Carter, tiny. So when we do merge, there will be a whole bunch of people kind of thrown in who will become Biden people instantaneously. And that's essentially what we're preparing for. Everything, we're doing all of the work besides finally relinquishing all of the data and kind of fusing our two sides together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, terrific. Who's next with a question, comment, ask to Spencer? Let's make it conversational. Yes, Nance. You have to unmute, Nance. Nancy, you have to unmute. That's all right. It's easy.
Okay, got it. Are you still employed by Human Rights Campaign, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, I'm not. So I left the Human Rights Campaign actually just after that. Sorry. I left the Human Rights Campaign right after that election cycle, so mid 2019. I still am in a volunteer capacity on a committee that they have. And I can kind of understand, break down what, you have the Human Rights Campaign and headquartered in DC. Then you have all of these steering committees. These steering committees are spokes all throughout the country. There's over 70. What you need to be a steering committee is to have 70 people who are part of what's called the Federal Club. Federal Club is people who are donating $100 a month to the Human Rights Campaign. Once you have that, that is when you'll have all of your subcommittees. So you have the Human Rights of Greater Cincinnati. Then you have a volunteer base, community organization, political, workplace equality, and all of those, and membership, and all of those kind of work in their own capacity, obviously. Greater Cincinnati, we do not just cover Cincinnati. We are essentially the HRC group for Louisville, Lexington, Frankfurt, Indianapolis. Columbus and Cleveland have their own, but they don't really, they're not going to Pittsburgh. They're just kind of staying and focusing in Cleveland and Columbus, where we kind of get spread very thin as an organization here in Greater Cincinnati, because when there is a Pride Festival at, Mike Pence's hometown, we go. And so that looked like for us personally about 30 Prides a year. I want to read this question real quick. Follow up to Susan's question, Obama campaign strategy. separated from the DNC, I think. Yes. So separated from the DNC. We're finding that the Biden campaign is maybe a little bit different this year, to where they are going to utilize us better. Yes. And if you're not going to the HRC executive committee, show up on Tuesday. So we're seeing that the Biden campaign is probably going to utilize the DNC a lot more, just because it's just so small, to where the Obama campaign had all of these resources and all of these different groups and money that the Biden campaign just frankly doesn't have.
Yeah, pardon me, 1 sec. Oh, go ahead, Spencer, finish that thought.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because of this pandemic especially, we are able to utilize our data and our mail-in efforts and all of those sorts of things in better ways that are going to be more targeted and a better fit.
Yeah, I'd like to make a suggestion that with a smaller group here, we have 12. Let's do our questions or conversations with Spencer through person to person, to speak up rather than by chat, because this way I think it'll work easier. And if there's something to post, if you have a link or a date or something specific, then you can put that down. So who's next with a comment, question, suggestion, ask of Spencer? Antoinette.
Yes, I'm curious, you have mentioned a couple of times now that the Biden campaign is the smallest campaign. Could you share more with us about why why either you think that is the case or why you know that is the case?
Yeah, it's really because of this pandemic.
Okay.
So usually, you have your campaign, we've never really chosen a nominee this early. And so usually, right after South Carolina is when basically campaigning for the Biden campaign stopped. He didn't hire on any new organizers to go into, California and go into these other states. And if it did, I don't know if you remember that time, the Bloomberg campaign was expecting that to kind of crumble, and he was in all of these different states ready to pound.
Right.
And he sucked up 3,000 political organizers on his payroll. And so there was not a lot of people to bring onto the campaign. So there was never really a need, especially once we went digital, for him to keep hiring. Because what usually happens is, like for me, I started with Hillary for America, HFA. And then I became ODP because those coordinated campaigns blend together. With this, what we're seeing this year is the Biden campaign keeping together, and then those coordinated campaigns hiring organically without releasing Obama people or Hillary people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, selfishly, I think you'd be a great candidate to be the Southwest Ohio Biden field organizer, Spencer. Should we do a lobbying effect to get you as our coordinator? Because you love the city, you have a lot of experience, you're young, you're a great networker. What do you think?
We'll see. I'll send you over the emails. No, that's another thing. So I am happy to say I'm in talks with ODP this time about what's next. But yeah, that's what it's really been like. It's usually like ODP, for instance, is asking the Biden campaign, all right, I'll take 50 of your organizers and I'll put them here, here, and here. But now what's happening is like ODP is like, oh, now I'm going to hire these people and I'm going to place them here, here, and here. It's just a different approach than I've seen in the last 2 presidentials I've worked on.
Well, some of us had experience where outsiders from the city came in, and they were fairly ineffective, I think, because they didn't know the neighborhoods, they didn't know the connections, they didn't know all of that, and it felt like we as little canvassers were trying to manage our field directors and coordinators. So I'd love it to have someone I know there's an advantage of bringing in outside because then you've got that power coming from another city. It's hard to be a prophet in your own land, maybe, but it was so ineffective, I thought. So I'd love to have someone picturing you as our Southwest Ohio. You'll have loads of support. Who's next for a question or comment to Spencer?
I'm going to just have a comment.
Yes.
Leave room to work on Charmaine's campaign. That's all I'm saying, Spencer.
Oh, yes. It's been an interesting time. I'm rolling off of something and going into something else. I'm excited for her campaign as well.
What would you picture, Mary Carol, of a specific way or more than one that Spencer could be a spokesperson, a surrogate, a rallier? Where do you picture Spencer being valuable to the Charmaine campaign?
Well, that's a good question. I think in somewhat the same ways all of you already are, and you are advocates, you're spokespersons, you're connecting us to people we haven't met before. I mean, obviously, we know that rallying the Dem base, getting people registered to vote is extremely important for all of the, just the whole Dem ballot, up and down the ballot. And I will say, while Judge Baradon is on here, that getting people to literally know to vote all the way down the ballot, it's speaking with one voice. I mean, even though I'm working, all the time on Charmaine's campaign, I'm also actively communicating to people the importance of, if we really want to see change in our own community, we need to support all of the Dem candidates. And we're obviously doing outreach to the Black community. And that's an area where Spencer may have contacts that we don't already have. Yeah. I think we do know, and Charmaine has already been well known in the Black community because of the good work that she did when she was the major. But I think that is the sort of the lay of the land in this day and age of campaigning with COVID. Spencer could host a Zoom meeting and invite friends to that meeting to meet Charmaine who haven't necessarily already met her.
That's a great suggestion.
We were just talking about sorry, Susan. The age we're kind of in allows us to talk to people we haven't talked with. I was with Denise Driehaus the other day on Zoom, and we were just kind of having a conversation. She said, all 52 neighborhoods were talking to each other on a Zoom call. That doesn't happen. No one's driving, to all the different neighborhoods or finding a particular location where they can all meet up. Right. But now we have the opportunity to do things in a new way. I want to segue into the Black community, but I want to hear what Susan had first. Hey.
Well, it's that as well. About young people. Is there a way to talk about the, 18 to 21 and then the 21 to 29 or 30? I mean, because if you look around, this group is pretty gray or sort of gray. And it seems that most of the people that we talk to are in the middle age or older group, and I think we need inroads with and connecting with younger people, and would like your advice on how to go about doing that.
Yeah, so this kind of tapped into what you were saying originally with what you're trying to do with just coalescing everything. I always say, coalition building is probably the most important thing we can do. I absolutely have a problem with two wonderful groups doing things, but not knowing about each other, not knowing those efforts, not knowing that I canvassed that block, When I was working with HRC, I'll be honest with you, I took those judicial slate cards and I stuck them in my literature and I stuck them in, people's doors because I was going on those doors and there was no need for someone to go right behind me and do the same dang thing. So, yes, people keep asking, is this year different with the young the young folks? I think so. I think that the energy, if we can capture this moment, what we've seen in the senatorial primary race in Kentucky should let us know that this year is not the same. $40 million she raised. You raised 700,000. We're waiting for those mail-in ballots to be counted, but that is something, and something that shouldn't be taken for granted. So what young people crave is they see their entire, if you say adult life, the government hasn't been functioning. It's kind of just on fire. All right, we were, I'm 20, I'll go, sorry, every year it's, I'm feeling it, 26. And personally, coming out of the recession was when I kind of was growing up. And it just, we just kind of have sucked. I haven't really seen, besides marriage equality and some really amazing Supreme Court decisions, I haven't seen legislation or government work for me on a local and national level. And that's just, facts. But this year does seem different. We just have to think of a way to capture the energy we have now. This kind of goes into the Black communities. It's authenticity. When I thought of organizing Black communities, my mind goes Urban League, NAACP, they'll get it done, give them some money, they've got the Black vote. It's not true. It's not where they are. All right, in my head, Black churches, they'll get it done. Do a Souls to the Polls event. That's true, but we see on a generational level that fewer and fewer younger people are attending church at a higher rate. The Black people aren't in churches. Those natural, and we know that the Black community, church isn't just church, it's a communal, spiritual, visceral place to be. But that's not where the last maybe 2 generations, I would say millennials and Gen Zs, Gen Zs being 18 to 22, that's not where they are, unfortunately. Obviously, we're seeing a resurgence in young pastors and all that kind of stuff. But to be frank, they're not there. So we've got to meet people where they are, but we can't leave them where they're at. And that, I think, is the vital thing that we've got to do in this next election, is figure out where those Black voices are. And right now, they're on the street. Right now, they're angry. Right now, they're hurting. And that, if we can just let them know, hey, vote for a new sheriff, vote for a new prosecutor, that's how you get things done. We've got to awaken the importance of local races. And that's what I'm encouraged to do, and will do here locally. But, it matters when you go into a courtroom what judge you have. That judge's experience and that judge's implicit bias about the people that are going to be in that court. So we've got to think outside of the lines, I would say, of grass tops organizing with the Black community, thinking that churches and NAACP and Urban League and YWCA are going to bring us across the finish line. There is just different sects. And, I'll say I started working, there's a lot of intersectionality here, but, I grew up in the suburbs and I wasn't really around a lot of Black people. And we can kind of talk about why, the Black people aren't there, or why, they don't accept someone who's mixed, or, what that looks like. But I was thinking, I was working with the Southwest Ohio Young Black Dems, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I told you earlier, those 3 organizations, and it's going to work. Well, then I found myself in, Winthrop High School with a megaphone explaining the importance of voting, and just people not getting it or clicking. In Pennsylvania, we had a problem with mail-in voting with the Black community. It's not because it wasn't easy enough. It's not because they didn't have a stamp. It's not because of those basic reasons. It's because voting in our community, it goes back to the heart. It goes back to the visceral thing. I always say I stand in line. I'm willing to stand in line for hours on end. Not needed. That doesn't need to happen. But because my ancestors didn't, and I'm going to stand there because they didn't have the choice and they didn't have the opportunity, and I do. And so in-person voting is very real with the Black community. We are always talking about, you know, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, but I was thinking of ways that we could somehow do a, you know, where people had their mail-in ballots and they were putting it symbolically in some ballot, and that ballot was safely getting to the polls, or those drop-off boxes, or trying to think outside of the lines of something like that. Because Black people want to vote, obviously, but they want, it's symbolic to press that button and stand in that line. And we've got to capture that some way that is able to respect that, but also be safe.
Is early voting help with that? How do you see early voting in that equation there, Spencer?
Totally. We know that Black people and people of color early vote at higher rates, right? We don't have the luxury of being off work or those certain things on election day. And early voting has been utilized heavily, especially with the Souls to the Polls, which is usually that last Sunday right before the election. So I say, you know, expanded early voting, safe early voting, only a certain amount of people at a time, just kind of has to be done. What's great about Ohio, and I didn't have the luxury in Pennsylvania, is, you know, Frank LaRose might not, you know, represent this flag, but the man's a decent man who is smart, who is good, and he's not going to do what, you know, the Secretary of State, you know, Brian Kemp, he's not going to Brian Kemp us in Georgia here in Ohio, and that's really good. Is that he was against the voting purge, and that he's getting rid of that technology. I think it was like counter something that they were using. So what's great is, you know, Frank is not a bad man, and he is seeing this pandemic for what it is, using rational science, and figuring out ways to make it safer for people to vote. And I think that's as well.
Who's next with a question, a comment, digging deep? What actions can we take and receive support? Chuck.
Spencer, I'm obviously one of the other gray hairs on this call, and I can talk to my friends and get them to, you know, vote up and down the ticket. That's great. But, you know, what I keep reading is social media is the place to be, and I'm not there. And, you know, I think maybe I should be there, but then I say something to my daughter and say, well, you know, maybe I should start tweeting. And she said, who's going to follow you anyway? So do you really think that is a useful way to, you know, reach people? Or am I just spinning my wheels if I really start tweeting?
No, not at all. There are millions of people just like you. I'll follow you. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a follower, Chuck.
I'll follow you.
There's millions of people who are sitting around just like you saying, does my tweet matter? Will people follow me? I'm trying to get the correct information out there. Will it be useful? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. I would say never diminish your light to, you know, make someone else feel better. Utilize that. I'm not a TikToker, or I'm not on the latest social media apps, but I'm finding that we have to be. You know, when I was working in Pennsylvania, we started these Snapchats and TikToks. These are new social media platforms. And while we might not even agree with them or like them, millions and millions of eyes are on them. And that's where people are spending their time, because they'll get on this thing and then they'll just be there and they're scrolling and they're seeing and they're just kind of diving in. So I was thinking, you know, for instance, with, you know, the McGuffey campaign, if we spent, you know, a week talking about one issue or deep diving into another issue, that's where real substantive, not just change, but like learning can happen. Like, why does my prosecutor matter? Well, he matters because he handles this and this and this, you know? So yes, get on those platforms, because whether we like it or not, you know, the world is not slowing down, and it's where millions of eyes are.
Yeah, good. Ruth has a
Yeah.
comment or question.
Yeah.
Ruth is next, and then Mary Carol.
First, just to you, Shad, the gray hairs don't show when you tweet. And the second thing is, I don't know how to tweet yet either, but I just follow people whose what they said sounds good to me. So, and I don't follow them. I don't know how to do that yet. Okay, second thing, I just love the concept that if I don't have never had a person who's of another color or another sexual orientation as a friend, a really good friend that we really share. I'm really not very educated. I can look at a book. It's so different though. So I just want to thank you for sharing. That's the second thing. And the third thing was, what would it be like in any community, but maybe the Black community, to have a virtual write-in, what do you call it, ballot party, so that at a certain day, you would say to you would have told your friends, okay, we're going to get together for a virtual party. And now maybe we can be in a physical place if there's only a few of us. I don't think so yet though. But you know, by this date, you're going to have had your ballot, you're going to have sent your ballot in, and we're going to celebrate that together. And a local person who lives on that street, they could, I don't know, get all their neighbors. It's not souls to the polls, but it's something like that. And when somebody challenges us and they make the deadline, that's how I get things done. Otherwise, for me, it can go on and I'll say, has it been 3 months? Oh, and you know, so that helps me, that being with friends or not, and with virtual, I guess you can do it across any lines. You can do it. I'm just thinking some kind of a party or a celebration that we've done this thing and we've got it in the mail, and yay, goody for us and goody for you. And yeah, so something like a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you.
What's your thoughts, Spencer?
No, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, is like, how do we take the symbolism that the Black community has for voting and standing in that line and casting that ballot and pressing that button, pulling that lever, if you will, and put that into a safe, actionable way. And I think something like, you know, very small drop boxes in certain communities, something like this, where maybe we could fill out the ballot together and we could have conversations about why Tom is the best, you know, judge candidate, and why, you know, I think that is kind of important as well. Then on top of that, you know, I love that idea, but then you've got to think, you know, not everyone in the Af community has the privilege of having internet and a working computer. There's like, there are problems upon problems, but that I think is exactly how we do this. We've got to, I think, in setting a date, even now, and then, you know, I always say, set it, build around it, you know, build it and they'll come, essentially. Yeah, setting it up now and kind of having a celebratory, you know, important event that's kind of based around voting and having your ballot and, you know, waving it and filling it out together and knowing each line. I feel like a lot of people, you know, vote, but maybe are uncomfortable because they feel like they don't know enough to vote on an issue or ballot initiative, or why issue 7 was so vitally important and we shouldn't, you know, demonize the streetcar. It's just kind of like things and things. I'll say I worked in Florida on the recount, and it was so depressing to be in Florida, not because of that, but there was so many ballots I looked at where there was 2 things filled out, and that was it. And we were so like close on so many things, and people would vote for like the senator, but they wouldn't vote for the governor's race. And I'm like, how can you vote for this person and not vote for that person and know the importance of completely filling out that ballot? I feel like some people just kind of feel inadequate, maybe.
Yeah, that's where that education and
so
all
too.
that is. Mary Carol and then Marty.
Yeah. Okay, so first I want to talk about just follow up on the idea of using Twitter. Chat, I will also follow you.
You've got a big following now, John.
Yeah, hey, you're doing, but you know what? It is absolutely one of the ways that campaigns have to use. That's just a platform that we have to use. If you did nothing other than in the beginning, just look at the candidates that you support. Most of them are on Twitter. Follow them, and you would be doing a huge favor if every time, oh, there you go, there's Judge Baradon. So every time you see them tweet something, all you have to do is retweet, or retweet with a comment that say, I'm voting for this person. You have no idea how that exponentially is going to have that ripple effect. So number one, I would encourage everybody to get on Twitter, whether you think you know what you're doing or not, okay? The second thing is we also are using Instagram, and Spencer, we're not on TikTok and like all the newest things, but we have a young woman who reached out to our campaign, and her mother told me probably 2 months ago, my daughter follows Charmaine. She thinks you have the most boring Instagram posts ever. I mean, seriously. And
You got an award.
Okay. I'm like, well, feedback well taken. Well, guess what? She has stepped up, and she is going to manage our Instagram account. So because she knows how to reach, she's probably, I think she's maybe a freshman in college. I mean, bright, young, she is awesome. And we're just like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So, you know, I may not have gray hair, but you should meet my hairdresser. She's wonderful. But I'm certainly of the age that, you know, my grandchildren are using Instagram and TikTok. But anyway, social media, I will tell you, it's an easy way for you to support down the ballot every candidate that you know who is a Dem running in Hamilton County, Supreme Court, you know, just the whole Dem ballot. If you just get on and follow those people, all you have to do is set up your own Twitter account and come up with with what you want to be called. And I'm MCM Cincy. If anybody wants to follow me, that would be great. And I can put in Charms as @Charm McGuffey. So that's my 2 cents worth on.
Terrific. And then Marty is next.
I had an idea which about making voting, keeping a little bit of the celebratory aspect of it, and that is to have an outing to drop off your ballot in the ballot box at the Board of Elections. Sorry, now the dog has to start barking. Sorry, hang on. Yeah, so.
Behaves really well. Yeah.
I don't really trust, I mean, I love the post office, but I feel uncomfortable putting my ballot into a post office box, like it might get lost. So I drove mine over to the Board of Elections after hours and dropped it in the box. And I think a lot of people would feel that way. Yeah. And it could be made into something fun, you know, where people had sort of a demonstration kind of thing, but everybody just walked past the ballot box and dropped their ballot in there.
Yeah, a drop off your ballot, little mini party, and just invite everybody and to keep the distances there. That is a great idea. You've got to, and we're keeping notes. You know, we have a recording here. Antoinette is next.
Yes, well, I second Marty's suggestion, and I know there's a lot of discussion afoot right now across the state about in the event of a pandemic, and we have limited polling places for in-person voting, of expanding the number of ballot boxes and how those can be secured and things like that. So that is a serious question. But I also wanted to let you know that in a conversation with our grandson, who is 18, about the social media vehicles or venues, he personally prefers Instagram, and he uses YouTube a lot. And I said, well, what about TikTok? Do you do TikTok? And he said, well, no, it's usually younger people. He's 18, so younger than him. And he didn't feel, he said, and it's not as intellectual as Instagram. And so I thought, well, okay, now we have to not only learn these new things, we also have to think about the market that they serve. So there's a certain population that is drawn to TikTok, and there's another kind of population, they might all be the same age, but they have this wide range of interests. So it pays to talk to people a lot.
That there are a lot of Black people on TikTok. I must admit to watching a lot of dance videos on there, which are hilarious.
What's your input there, Spencer?
Well, TikTok has actually been in a bit of hot water because their algorithm actually promotes white creators above people of color.
Yeah, I noticed I was getting mostly white people, and
Right.
then I started liking a lot
Okay.
of Black ones, and then I got a better.
Yeah.
We're not hearing Spencer.
Yeah, Spencer, we kind of lost your sound for a moment.
Oh.
It's frozen.
Am I okay
Yeah.
again?
It's freezing up a little bit.
Oh.
Try again. Yeah, we're not hearing your voice right now. You could try taking your, well, I think he's doing that already. Yeah. Try it over, right? When you get stuck, you reboot.
Reboot.
Yeah. Yeah, I froze up earlier and I had to go out and come back in.
Yeah, right. Here comes Spencer back. Spencer.
Am I okay again? I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry.
It's the quirks of these
Sorry.
things.
But an example of how TikTok can work, and it does, you were right, whoever said that about it reaching a different audience. There was a viral video that a woman put out about, hey, let's reserve Trump tickets in Tulsa. Well, there was millions of teens and preteens or thousands, that reserved those tickets, and they kind of, and then we had, Mr. Parcells say, oh, we've got so many people signed up. Well, they were, helpful in drowning out that support in that area. I would also say a younger and younger generations they're not waiting to be of voting age to be influential. I was 13 years old and I was knocking doors and having conversations and getting kicked out of Walmart parking lots for voting, registering people to vote. We don't have to wait for someone to be of voting age to be influential within our campaigns and within our communities. And I think that is something to respect as well.
Yeah, the social media is so important, as is the relational, what I call, a lot of people call relational organizing. And that is building the relationships. And one of the reasons I reached out to you, Spencer, to invite you here is because we connected here and there kind of in passing in little snippets of conversation, but we didn't have a coffee or a lunch or a beer or, something of more depth. And I thought, oh, let's bring it together. So it's really, now all of us are feeling like we're getting to know you. You're an ally. You're a friend. How important is relational organizing in your view as an organizer? And how do you suggest doing that in this time of the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. So I would say it's pretty much everything. What you have at the end of the day is you have your reputation and you have, people's personal feelings of you. We all kind of joked about, having an outsider come in to Cincinnati to work. But for a year, I was that outsider. I was, sitting down at those meetings and people were like, who are you? Why are you here? I don't want you here. With HRC, I had some barriers to entry, especially within communities of color, where I was asked to leave the table. I didn't, and I told them I would see them next week. I kept showing up. I kept showing up. I kept showing up. It's everything. ways to do it now, I think I love Zoom, but it can't just be Zoom, right? And I think this is where we can go back a little bit. Like, how did you organize a campaign before you had the internet? Let's do some good mailers. Let's do some really like interesting things that are kind of outside of maybe just utilizing the internet. I think that is so important. You know, Aftab sent me a handwritten note, and I can't even remember last time someone hand wrote a note and sent it to me. It had to be years, or ever, honestly. That meant something. That was special. I think that going back a little bit, we can hit it from both sides.
Yeah.
I really feel like this year, where we can go back to the roots of relational organizing and traditional organizing, and then utilizing and leveraging those platforms that we have, and maybe that we're not on, but we can be part of.
That is so cool. That's a good suggestion. We have Hallmark cards. When we were kids, you know, that was the idea of getting a Hallmark or some kind of a card to send to somebody and mail it to them. And TikTok. So we have the whole range of a personal call, handwritten notes in the TikToks. Who's next with the comment, question?
Take a handwritten note and put it on TikTok.
Yeah, that's right.
On TikTok.
Yeah. Are you a TikToker, Judge Baradone?
No, because I have young children and I'm terrified if I started doing TikTok, that's all they would do all day long. So, yeah.
Yes, I understand, right? Yes. Who's next with a question, comment, dive deeper with Spencer? Yes, Chuck.
Spencer, I was a diehard Bernie Sanders fan, and when I get behind a candidate, I get behind a candidate. Well, the first time I heard Charmaine, I was blown away. I've heard Judge Baradon, I love him. I heard Fanon, I love him. Joe Biden, I'm going to vote for, obviously, because I hate Trump. But could you kind of give me a reason to get really pumped up? I mean, one of my major issues is Medicare for all. And to me, I've been involved with it for a number of years. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. When you talk about the public option, it's unsustainable. I mean, you're spending too much money. You're giving too much money to insurance companies. You can't really make it work unless you eliminate that. And I understand people don't like change. And he could say, yeah, it's going to take time. But he doesn't even admit that. He just says, we need the public option, which to me is just really not a smart way to go. Every person I've talked to who knows about this just says, it's not going to work. You know, it's going to self-implode, which it's doing anyway. So could you kind of pump me up on why I should really get excited about Biden?
There's a challenge here now, Spencer.
Wow. Well, I think that your concern is what a lot of people feel. We have a candidate who is a good man, but maybe doesn't always see the moment that we're in. I'll give you another example besides Medicare is, you know, his answer for the current situation with policing is community policing. People of color don't want more police. They don't want that in their community. What they want is like, you know, what I see when I go to the suburbs and the community that I was raised in was not community policing. It was good infrastructure. It was good schools. It was good jobs. It was good life. That's what they want. They don't want more police. So there does have to be an awakening and maybe a little pull and a push to Joey to the left a little bit. You know, I have always kind of been center, I guess, if you will, a weird, young, moderate. That's what I've been called a lot. But I'm not ashamed of it. Yeah, so we have someone who still sees the institutions and the confines because he knows how to work and manipulate those institutions. And we're seeing a time in our history where people are ready to tear that institution down and rebuild it into a new image. Kind of where we're at with the Medicare situation as well, right? We can talk about, oh, the insurance, you know, caps and those sorts of things. People just want good healthcare and be able to, you know, not have it, you know, I have a $6,000 medical bill that I have to go take care of myself with Cleveland Clinic. And it's like, that just shouldn't be. So yeah, what I will say is, like, I think Joe is the person for now because he is able to direct and lead. What Joe also does really well is take into consideration people's views and lead those views into actual substantive change. So while we might not have him screaming Medicare for all, we know that we will have a better Medicare system, or better medical system with him at the helm. I mean, what was it, 2 days ago or so that Trump came out? He's asking the courts to again get rid of the Affordable Care Act. It's just where we're at. There's a lot of people who are going to be like you. They're going to have to swallow a tough pill in November and maybe vote for someone that they aren't fully behind. And it's a sad reality we live in. I don't believe in the statement of voting for the lesser of two evils. In this situation, we have an evil person and we have a good man. And that's our option. What I will say is I know that Joe will surround himself and put an administration that will not just be lip service, but actual change and put those people in positions of power that they need to be there. What I'm seeing as far as, the comment I had earlier about community policing, he is starting to change his vibe on that. He's coming around to, Medicare. It's, he is a man of a certain age as well. And he knows, he just knows how to manipulate the institutions and effectively make those institutions tick and work. And we're just, again, at a time where those institutions just are not serving the people. And that's where people are frustrated at. And that's where maybe their problem with Joe is he sees one thing and says, I can fix it. And people are saying, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to tear it down. And that's an interesting thing.
In your view, in being in the more in the system of the Democratic Party and all that more than we are, is there any validity or worth in lobbying with the Biden campaign of who should be chosen as vice president, or is that just the whistling in the wind? We're not going to have any effect. And or what would your advice be if the Biden group called you and said, we'd like your idea, Spencer? What would your advice be to the Biden campaign?
There's never been, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, a more important vice presidential pick than now, right?
Agreed. Yes.
Agreed? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, it's usually a job that, who was it that didn't want to be vice president? I think it was maybe Thomas Jefferson or something. He was like, the vice presidency is it's a nothing role. Now it's it's symbolic. It is, it also could serve to unite a party that's divided between the Bernie people and the other people, and what we're kind of seeing. It's weird to say that I don't have personal views on this, but I don't. If anything, I want it to be Hillary, but I know that's not going to be a thing. I don't know. I think that there's some really good options. I'm not forcing him to pick someone of color. I think it's about due time, though. And I think that can also help solidify and bring out, it's sad to say, but I don't think the Black community always needs a Black candidate to come out and vote for, right? They just need to understand that certain candidates respect them, respect their voices, and are willing to help change their lives, Here in Cincinnati, the thing I'm going to be focused on in the next couple of years is our child poverty rate. It's absolutely not acceptable. And so, no, I don't have a certain pick for VP. I don't have much skin in the game or feeling towards it, but I do feel that it's so vitally important to unite the party, conform around two individuals, and then look at Mike Pence and that guy and see if that's where America should be for the next 4 years. I think we have an opportunity to shape what the face of our country looks like over the next couple of years.
Terrific. Susan.
This is for Chot and anybody else who's not hot on Biden. he was not my choice either. However, I am so fearful of Trump getting reelected that I love Biden. I mean, it has moved me on the scale over the cliff for Biden, just because I'm so frightened of the future if we don't get him out. So.
Yeah, I'm picturing it as a 5-year campaign, meaning we get Biden as this step, this next movement, and then we immediately begin working at moving the party into the next Democratic nominee, assuming Biden's not going to be that, or the vice president or whatever, towards the directions that you referred to, Chad, or you referred to, Spencer, with community policing. So I think we need to get that bigger view rather than simply the next 4 months or whatever. Antoinette?
The other comment I had was about Medicare for all.
Yeah.
All of you young people don't realize we pay a lot more. It comes out of our Social Security checks. So it is not what people think, that it's free healthcare.
Yeah.
So I would like to see, you know, that we have national health insurance rather than,
Yeah.
I would like to even see Medicare changed.
Yeah, that's right. Antoinette and then Nancy.
And Marie also had her hand up.
Marie, Antoinette, and then Nancy.
Okay, so it's more a comment for Chad also, is Biden, we need to take it as a very pragmatic vote. I totally agree with Susan. The alternative is so frightening that it has to be, you just need to have patience. Okay, you are not maybe going to have everything you want right now, but voting for Joe Biden and being behind him is a necessary step. So that's what I see it. And for me, it's actually sufficient to get all worked up and do whatever I can do to have Joe Biden elected.
Yes.
Another comment, and to second again, Susan, is we have single payer in France, but it's not free. And that notion that suddenly the government is going just to take up the bill is absolutely wrong. And that's the reason why I think, again, we just need to have patience, and then jumping from the current, system to a single payer system may not just be feasible. And again, I am a scientist and I am very pragmatic by nature. And that's also the reason why I don't think actually it may be good to go from one way to another way without a transition period. You will pay no matter what. It's just how it is being done. But thinking that everything is going to become free, like some candidates have tried to portray it, it's just not happening. Yes. So, sorry, I'm
That's
also
perfect. Yes.
But,
we don't want to go in completely into all the details of that, but I think your view and from France is really valuable, Marie. Antoinette and then Nancy.
Yes. Thank you, Spencer, for your statement that the people who are calling for change are saying, don't fix it, tear it down. And that made me think about Joe Biden's life, where in his personal life, a number of times he's had it torn down for him personally, where his wife and at least one child were killed in the automobile accident. He had to, because what do? If you don't fix it and you tear it down, you have to build it all over again. You have to build from scratch. So I know in his personal life, and then with his son, who passed away recently from cancer. But are there some relevant political examples where Joe Biden has done the same thing in his political life that he's done in his personal life? Because he embodies building it new. He had to rebuild his life after his wife and children were killed, and he's done that successfully. And are there things that he's done politically that would be relevant to what's happening today? that he's one who knows how to build it anew for us. You don't have to answer it, but if you have the answer, I'd love to hear it.
I don't think I have the answer, but I can only imagine the stress and anxiety it would feel to be a ranking member of our Senate and to step away to take up a role that many don't see that there's a lot of power in. He rebuilt his political life to make sure that he knew that he was the right man to carry the first Black president into office. He had that weight behind him. And I imagine it would be a torturous experience to step down from the Senate to go into a role that, wasn't as powerful, if you will. That was a way of him kind of rebuilding his life in a new way, especially with all of the baggage that he had in the early years throughout, the 70s and the 80s, through some comments and through some legislation. I think that was a way for him to kind of rebuild as well. And I really like that, just the way of thinking about that. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's insightful. We should look for other ways, Antoinette, to give those as models of legislation that really did work, not just the fine tuning kind of stuff or the perhaps not very popular kind of stuff. We should do research to find some of those. Your example's a really good one, Spencer. Nancy is next.
I was just going to, it's piggybacking on what Antoinette said, but Jon Stewart was on Stephen Colbert a few nights ago, and he spoke about how he, was never a fan of Biden. That wasn't his top choice on the stage, but he brought up the point that this is a person who has suffered enough in life and accomplished enough in life to be a good leader. And when you think of the narcissist the power of that narcissism in the negative, of course, what we've been putting up with, that we have to have a person who's in touch with the human experience and how what they do impacts all of us, whether it's racism or health, and especially with COVID, we see a person who has no clue about what people are suffering. So it was just a comment that he put it very well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I would follow just one more thing. I feel maybe I'm a campaign writer or something, but again, going back to something that, following from what Nancy just said, and going back to something that you said earlier, Spencer, that about Joe Biden's leadership and how he listens. So I was thinking, well, there's 3 L's. Biden listens, learns, and leads.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I like that.
I know. That's right. I think you're going to be getting a follow-up from Judge Baradon and from Mary Carroll to help frame. It's so important. There's an organization that we're doing some research about called Frameworks, and how you frame things, how you position things like you just did, Antoinette. It's not just being cute, it makes people think in a new way, and different emotional response when we put those together. It's almost like the power of poetry to do some of that. Yeah. Who is next for a comment, a question, a wonderment?
I just had 2 things.
Yes.
What else? I'm looking for hands or something. Just to mention about the insurance or healthcare in general, a big facet of why we need to get off of the current situation that we're on is employer-based healthcare isn't great. All right. I've changed my healthcare 2 times this year with a gap of like a month in between. And the month in between is when I got something that I needed to get taken care of. That didn't serve me well. And, many people are working, the minimum wage in this country is crap. Many people are working for terrible wages, and they don't get offered insurance through their employer. And then when they shop for it outside of the confines of employer-based insurance, it's very expensive. And it's just not right. And it just has to be a new way of thinking about it. Also, just to say, like, younger people do not stay at the same job for 20 years, for 15 years, for 10 years, for 5 years. It's just not a reality now. We have these, it's called a gig economy, where there are people who kind of just get into a gig, if you will. You know, I'm playing a gig, you know, it's kind of like a band. I'm playing here and I'm playing there and I'm playing there, where they kind of move jobs a lot. I change my job probably every year. It's not because I am not, you know, I can work in the private sector and go work at P&G if I want, but it's just not, it's not me. It doesn't fit my life. And I don't think that I should change my life to try and just have good healthcare. I'd also say I will talk with ODP leadership. I think that organizations like you need to leverage the tools that ODP is paying for to do the work that we're trying to do on the ground. I'm thinking of resources like an app called Reach, True Talk, Hustle. All of these are different platforms where we're able to contact people where they are at. And, you know, they do them on a different level. One does auto dialing, one does text messaging, and one finds people that have maybe taken an election year off and need to be like reactivated. Those platforms are expensive. We have a wonderful party that's already paying the bill. We need people like you to take those tools, learn them, and use them.
Do you suggest, Spencer, that we as an activist group, we are independent of the party, but we're very aligned, and particularly we're aligned with candidates like Charmaine and Tom here, and many others. We have 33 candidates that we've identified that we're supporting in different ways and with teams. Do you sense working with those particular tools through the campaign? In other words, as we work with the different candidates, that they would have that or encourage them to have that? Or do you picture our doing that on independent, on our own, which we've had Vote Builder at different times on our own. What is your view of that? And maybe first Spencer, then Mary Carol.
Oh, totally, Mary. But I think that just some of these are so expensive that it doesn't. If there was a way to kind of like split it and have you have your own text bank or your own phrasing that could be sent out in a way, of course. I think that is important. I mean, I've seen some of the bills for these platforms. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right. What's your guidance, Mary Carol?
So what Spencer just mentioned is the expense of these. So I know that Kate Schroeder's campaign, because she is working with the DCCC, is using Outvote. And there's in fact a training today about that. But I realized that in talking to her staff, they're pretty prescriptive in working on the messaging of the DCCC. So that's not something that we can really piggyback on, but that's what I've been looking for. And on my notes, and Judge Baradon knows this too, that the Hamilton County Dem Party, it doesn't just have a coordinated judicial campaign, which I think is great, but we also have a coordinated overall campaign. So my question is, through the Hamilton County Dem Party to Eddie, is that, what tools, to Spencer's exact point, does ODP have that we can all take advantage of? Because one of the other things is there's so many platforms out there, just trying to figure out which is the best to use. I'm going to use the one that we can hopefully, like Mobilize USA is an ODP product. And we do use that, and other campaigns use that. So when we create events, we can go on there. When we used to do canvassing, we would put that as the link and people could easily sign up. We haven't used it in a while because we haven't been doing those kinds of things. But my hope is that through ODP, we can get a hub dialer as well as one of these texting apps that would be available for the campaigns to use, and then certainly be able to sign up volunteers to help us use it.
Yeah. What's your sense, Spencer? Is what Mary Carol's suggesting a path that, with our support to the candidates and to ODP as well, does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. And that's kind of where we're at. I think when we're always talking about, those two different organizations doing the same thing, it's expensive sometimes to do the same thing. We've got to maybe figure out the legal framework of how you can utilize their platform and have your own maybe subsection of it, or what that could look like. But, when we're uploading the Board of Election rolls to the database with cell phone numbers, and we've got all of those numbers, it's going to be vital for you to be able to pinpoint and use that knowledge and that data to your best advantage as well on a local level. We're learning more. The importance of local elections, I think, is finally awakening in the minds of people.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we've got to get these down ballot cards out there now. Like, if we know who our candidates are for all of the offices, we've got to start getting that out. Joe at the top, and then just going down the list. So that way there's kind of no excuse for someone to say, oh, I didn't know about this race, or I didn't know about that race. When people get in those offices and they're voting for those judges and they don't see a D or an R, it kind of gets, again, that the inability to have the knowledge,
right,
for one to feel that they have the power to confidently say, I'm voting for that person because I know them, is something that we have a presidential candidate earlier now than in a long time that we've rallied around. So that part's done. Now we have the ability to kind of focus on, I want Democratic dog catchers. I'm happy that our corner is running unelected, because I was going to go out there and talk about how she is the best corner in the world. That's kind of where we're at.
So we can't wait till last minute either. Is that right? I mean, it takes 7 times for people to learn that this guy Baradon is the fact that you've run before, it's the fact that you've won before is a help, but we got to do that. And there are other judges that have not, and our Supreme Court judges are so important that we need to do that. Now, how to get that printed now? Do we print our own? Mary Carol, you went quickly. How do we get that early?
Okay, no, we don't want to be printing our own. So again, this coordinated campaign, I see Judge Baradon shaking his head too, but that's also on my list to talk to Eddie about. Where are we and how soon are these going to be available? So the party will be printing them. This is part of the coordinated campaign. And then we should be getting them out to all the volunteers. Anyway, so. And
we can do that early. You're suggesting, Spencer and Mary Carol, and
all of us, on my call
to do that early. And Eddie's going to be with us in Bold New Democracy in our work session next Tuesday night. So he'll be working with us in person, so we can. What's that, Tom?
Hold Eddie to that next week. I just put up our slate card right now, which you guys are seeing for the first time. We got to go back and forth on lettering. The other issue is with the coordinated campaign, and Mary Carol can probably agree with this, is there's a lot of people involved right now. 13 judicial candidates with 2 Supreme Court candidates makes it 15. Then we have a full slate of all of the county offices running this year. Everyone has to sign off. Everyone needs to feel comfortable with the lit that's coming out. It takes some cooperation. It takes different candidates have to give up different things. There's negotiation about who goes where. So right now it's great that we can start this early. It reminds me a lot of 12. Obama was running for the second time, having someone out there who can really push us ahead with Biden. I met Biden. My wife was involved with AFL-CIO for years, and Biden was always involved with them. I understand what people say, but I also know that he is one of the hardest workers I've ever met, campaigning wise and going out and campaigning for other candidates. I mean, the man will stump for anyone that he likes and that he knows. And to be honest, there's not many people he hasn't met and doesn't like. So I just think with him on the top of the ticket, even though it's a county race, I mean, there is nothing statewide except for the Supreme Court candidates. So it is going to be incredibly important for everyone in the Bold New Democracy and in your circles really to get to know all the local candidates. And it's been great to see Charmaine out so much. And she's really leading the example, I think, for all the local candidates to get out there and meet with people and talk with people. And now that the primaries are over, you're definitely seeing Fanon and Alicia out there a lot more as well, getting out and talking to people. Maybe some people, because they had run in districts before who did not know them as well, they are doing a great job in getting out there. But because we can't talk to people face to face, because I can't shake hands, because I can't hug people at parades, the digital stuff is so much more important. What you've got right now, we haven't printed out yet with the PDF. Everything we do this year, and we've never done it this way before, is going to be focused on digital. So if we print a piece out, you're going to have it in a digital format. You won't have to convert it. You can put it up on Facebook, on Twitter. You'll be able to text it to all of your friends so they can have it right away. We understand that we're moving into a digital age a lot faster than we wanted to. Hamilton County has always been about meeting people face to face. That's what Democratic candidates did. That's what David Crowley did. That's how I came up learning to do stuff. But we've got to pivot. And with people like Spencer helping now, who have more background in digital and know how these programs work, and with Eddie at the party knowing how to do that, I think we'll be successful this year.
Way to go. That's inspiring. Thank you very much. As we get very close to the end, Spencer, what are specific things we can do as an activist group, individually, small groups, maybe whole group, to support you? What are some ways that, in addition to campaigning for you to become our Southwest Ohio Biden Democratic Party leader, in addition to that, what specific things can we do to support you in your goals for the next few weeks or months or long term?
Yeah, of course. So I think so with this central committee role, right? I'm they told me, is anyone else in here on central committee for Hamilton County? All right, so they tell us oh, staff your polling locations and do all that. I think I'm gonna be looking up who was staffing my polling locations earlier and make sure that they're okay. But also just giving you that list of central committee people. Maybe it's because the first time I'm in this role, I'm taking it serious, and I'm knocking doors in my apartment building when I have the slate card. I'm not working for a particular campaign. I'm working for a party. I'm working for a better tomorrow.
How can we help you do that? See, those are things you're doing. I'm asking, how can we support you, Spencer? Do you want
I think I'm going to give you all those names and then figure out what precinct you're in, who your person is, and then I would say team up with them to figure out what is needed in your particular areas.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. That would be helpful. Closing comments, appreciations for Spencer. Who wants to begin our little parade of celebrations, thank yous, whatever. Mary Carol.
Yep. Thank you, Spencer. It was really good to see you. Glad you're back in the area. And thanks to all of you who hang in there all the time working for all of our candidates.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, who's next?
I'll go next. Thank you, Spencer. I really appreciate your helping me and sparking in my brain some new ways to look at some old things. And it's really helpful.
Yeah. Who's next? Yes, Marnie.
Thank you. You give me hope. Thank you. I hope to follow you on Twitter and elsewhere.
Yeah. And Ruth.
Thank you, Spencer, because without your sharing and the hope that I see and the courage and who you are, I would probably be tearing my hair out and depressed or anxious or both. No, that's three things, all three. So I am so grateful to feel a part of something that's alive and healthy and moving forward. Bravo to everybody on this call, though, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Who's next?
Oh, Ed.
Yeah, Ed.
Okay. All right. I haven't said anything because I didn't have anything to say, but I learned a lot by listening, which is unusual for me. Thank you, Spencer, for being here. I love to see young, vibrant people because, as was pointed out, most of us, excepting for those who have been helped artistically, are gray, okay? And so it's really good to see you, and happy Pride, by the way, as we wind down the month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone else? In closing, yeah, Chad.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. And actually, thank you to the whole group. I mean, everybody's comments I really appreciate, and I wish we had more time to go over some of this stuff. But yeah, it's been helpful to, you know, all the ideas about, you know, different Zoom groups and whatever. And I was just thinking we ought to get a Zoom group together and just talk about candidates. You know, do you like this person? Do you not like this person? You know, what's wrong? Well, you know, why wouldn't you vote for them? So yeah, it's given me a lot of thoughts. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Can we think of you as a resource, Spencer, as we continue navigating our way?
Of course. You know, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm downtown. I'm here.
Yeah. And you'll notice that Spencer's email, I believe you put that in there. Is that right, Spencer?
Yeah,
Is in the
just
chat.
Spencer.
So before we end here in a moment, you might want to jot that down, and you can always contact me if you wish as well. I have Spencer's contact information. Susan.
I just noticed when Spencer talked, he was saying, yeah, you can contact me anytime. So, but you're giving the no nod instead of.
I'm sorry.
This lasts for nonverbal.
Good. We are challenging sometimes, Spencer. We watch the subtleties, but you've been great. It was exactly what I was hoping for and much more, because now getting to know you and more personally than those little snatches of times when we were connecting, I feel like, wow, you're bringing a depth and a power and a sensitivity. And particularly I was touched at how you describe yourself as more moderate. And I think from the middle position, even though we all love the polarity stuff, it's in the middle position where the real work, in a way, gets done. And I really admired your way to hold so many factions or energies all together, I think, brilliantly. But I've become a big fan of yours now. So thank you all for taking part.
Thank you.
And we'll have a recording of this also available. So thank you so much, Spencer. Let's stay in touch.
I always say until next time, never goodbye. So
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Very much. Bye-bye.